Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 25 of our reading of Leaves of Gold, and we're going to go over what Leaves of Gold actually is. Leaves of Gold is an anthology of prayers, memorable phrases, inspirational verse, and prose from the best authors of the world, both ancient and modern, edited by Clyde Francis Lytle. Next, we have the copyright information, which is super important. It is the revised edition, 12th printing, 1964, copyright 1938 by Evan S. Coslett. Revised 1948 by Donald G. Remley, copyright 1948 by ACNDG Remley. And it is published by the Coslett Publishing Company out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and written in the United States, in the United States of America. And we have a chapter here, chapter, I believe, 24. Chapter 24 is on perspective. So let's get this underway. This one's probably kind of a long one, but anyways, let's get this. I'm just going to check. 46. That's not bad. It's only 7 pages. So anyways, let's go. Viewpoints. There is a story of 2 Greek sculptors who competed for the placing of a statue on a pillar in the public square, and one worked skillfully and well until the features of his figure were smoothed and polished to look as if living. But the other left his block of marble crude and jagged and uncouth, so that one could hardly tell if indeed it was a human being. Indeed, if it were a human being at all. And they put the statue of the first up on the pillar, where all might see, but high up on the pillar it was blurred by distance, and it could not be seen clearly from any angle. So they took it down and put up the others. And behold, that which had not seemed true to life was now in its right perspective, and became lifelike and beautiful, true to the imagination. That is by Edgar White Burrell. Fairy tales. Every man's life is a fairy tale written by God's finger. That is by Hans Christian Andersen. Nobility. King Philip was with a large company of soldiers in splendid array, went to visit Socrates. When the grand procession reached the city where Socrates lived, a part of the time they learned that Socrates was out in the country. The king was astonished. He exclaimed, "Socrates, come with me. I will let you reign over a part of my kingdom." Socrates said, "Then I would be like King Philip?" Yes, well, replied Socrates. I can see how Socrates I can see how Socrates could be made like King Philip, but I do not see how King Philip could be made like Socrates. King Philip is buried in the tomb of forgetfulness. Socrates lives on, linked with the harbingers of Christ. Next we have faithfulness. When Pompeii was destroyed, there were very many buried in the ruins of it, who were afterwards found in very different situations. There were some found who were in the streets as if they had been attempting to make their escape. There were some found in deep vaults as if they had gone thither for security. There were some found in lofty chambers, but where did they find the Roman sentinel? They found him standing at the city gate, with his hand still grasping the war weapon, where he had been placed by his captain. And there, while the heaven threatened him, there, while the earth shook beneath him, there, while the lava stream rolled, he had stood at his post, and there, after 1,000 years had passed away, was he found. So let Christians stand to their duty on the spot which their captain has placed them. That is from Evangelist. Next we have pessimism. If it wasn't for the optimist, the pessimist would never know how happy he wasn't. Very true. Next we have, it is not growing like a tree. In bulk doth make man better. nor standing long an oak tree 100 years. To fall a log at least dry, bald, and sere, a lily of a day is fairer far in May. Although it fall and die that night, it was the plant and flower of light. In small proportions we just beauties see, and in short measure life may perfect be. That is by Ben Jonson. It's kind of hard to read that text because it's small and italicized. Now we have adaptations. In the natural law in the spiritual world, Professor Henry Drummond had a striking passage in which he describes the wonderful adaptation of each organism to its surroundings, of the fish to water, of the eagle to the air, of the insect to the forest bed, and to each part of every organism: the fish's swim bladder, the eagle's eye, the insect's breathing tubes. All these, he said, inspire us with a sense of the boundless resources and skill of nature in perfecting her arrangements for the individual life. Down in the last detail, the world is made for what is in it, and by whatever process things are as they are, all organisms find in surrounding nature an ample complement, the ample complements of themselves. As this holds, as one ascends the scale of being, man finds every want met and need answered. It is as true of his mental and of his physical makeup. When we reach the apex of the pyramid of being, we must hold that the same law obtains. Faith must have realities adjusted to its varying needs. For faith, the supernatural is the natural. It is faith's medium, its native air. Therefore, the incomprehensible indeed of destroying or preventing faith permits it. It creates faith. It demands faith. It is faith's glory. And that is by Brooks. Next, we have arriving. We picture death as coming to destroy. Let us rather picture Christ as coming to save. We think of death as sending. Let us rather think of life as beginning, and that more abundantly. We think of losing. Let us think of gaining. We think of parting. Let us think of meeting. We think of going away. Let us think of arriving. And as the voice of death whispers, "You must go from earth," let us hear the voice of Christ saying, "You are but coming to me." That is by Norman MacLeod. Next, we have imitation. To be in Christ is to live in his ideals, character, spirit, as the atmosphere of being. Men everywhere are living in the ideals and characters of others. He who lives in the spirit of Raphael becomes a painter. He who lives in the spirit of Milton becomes a poet. He who lives in the spirit of Bacon becomes a philosopher. He who lives in the spirit of Caesar becomes a warrior. He who lives in the spirit of Christ becomes a man. That is by Anonymous. Next, we have stewardship. I bought gasoline. I went to the show. I bought some new tubes for my radio. I bought candy and peanuts, nut bars, and ice cream. While my salary lasted, life sure was a scream. It takes careful spending to make money go round. One's methods of finance must always be sound. While habits quite costly, it's really hard to save. My wife spent $10 on a permanent wave. The church came uh, the church came around begging. It sure made me sore. If they'd let me alone, I'd give a lot more. They have plenty of nerve. They forgot all the past. I gave them a quarter the year before last. That's from The Lookout. Next, we have virtue. Chinamen wear 5 buttons only on their coats, that they may keep in sight something to remind them of the 5 principal moral virtues which Confucius recommended. They are humanity, justice, order, prudence, and rectitude. Next we have good. Live for something, do good, and leave behind you a monument of virtue that the storm of time can never destroy. Write your name in kindness, love, and mercy on the hearts of thousands you come in contact with year by year. You will never be forgotten. No, your name, your deeds will be as legible on the hearts you leave behind as the stars on the brow of evening. Good deeds will shine as the stars of heaven. As by Chalmers. Next we have worth living. Is life worth living? Yes, so long as there is wrong to right. Wail of the weak against the strong, or tyranny to fight, long as there lingers gloom to chase, or streaming tear to dry. One kindred woe, one sorrowing face that smiles as we draw nigh. Long as a tale of anguish swell, the heart and lids grow wet. And at the sound of Christmas bells, we pardon and forget. So long as faith and freedom reigns, and loyal hope survives, the gracious charity remains to leaven lowly lives. While there is one untrodden tract for intellect or will, and men are free to think and act, life is worth living still. That is by Alfred Austin. Next we have Pebbles on the Shore. I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself and then finding a prettier shell or a smoother pebble than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. That is by Isaac Newton. Next we have first. When Leonardo da Vinci resolved to paint the Last Supper, he threw all his energies into the work. He labored early and late. No pains were spared by him. He pondered devoutly those pages of the New Testament which recorded the first sacramental feast, in order that he might do his best to realize and reproduce the memorable scene. At length, his task was done. Having given the finishing stroke, he invited a few confidential friends to a private inspection. They gazed attentively, and various remarks were made. An observation from one of them, however, led, as will be seen, to unexpected results. He spoke with great admiration of a golden chalice represented as being on the table at which our Lord and his disciples sat. Its shape, color, size were all that could be desired. That, exclaimed the critic, is the most beautiful object in the picture. Hearing what was said, the artist took up a brush and dipped it in black paint, deliberately smearing it over the whole canvas. He soon exclaimed it. If, he said, what you tell me is true, then my picture is a failure, for I meant my master's face to be the chief and most beautiful object. All are artists. A good or bad picture, each of us is painting, the picture of life. Too often, alas, men make inferior things the most conspicuous objects on the canvas of their daily history, bestowing rich colors and carefully handicraft upon trifles. But the Savior should be the grand center of our souls, and should have our chief and first attention. That is by T. Stevenson. Next we have temperance. There is no difference between knowledge and temperance, for he who knows what is good and embraces it, who knows what is bad and avoids it, is learned and temperate. That is by Socrates. Next we have mistakes. Mistakes. There are 6 mistakes of life, and many of us make, said a famous writer, and then he gave the following list. the delusion that individual advancement is made by crushing others down, the tendency to worry about things that can't be changed or corrected, insisting that a thing is impossible because we ourselves cannot accomplish it, refusing to set aside trivial preferences in order that important things may be accomplished, neglecting development and refinement, the failure to establish the habit of saving money. That is by Southern Bulletin. Next, we have many-sidedness. I tell you that Jesus challenges the attention of this world by his many-sidedness. He meets the needs of all classes and conditions of men. As deep unanswered and deep unanswereth unto deep, so does he respond to the movings of each soul of men. Call the roll of the world's workers and ask, what think ye of Christ? Their answers amaze us. To the artist, he is the one altogether lovely. To the architect, he is the chief cornerstone. To the astronomer, he is the sun of righteousness. To the baker, he is the living bread. To the biologist, he is life. To the builder, he is the sure foundation. To the carpenter, he is the door. To the doctor, he is the great physician. To the educator, he is the great teacher. To the farmer, he is the sower. To the florist, he is the rose of Sharon. To the geologist, he is the rock of ages. To the philanthropist, he is the unspeakable gift. To the servant, he is the good master. What is he to you? That is by Selected. The footpath to peace. A thought for the opening year. To be glad in life because it gives you the chance to love and to work and to play and to look up at the stars. To be satisfied with your possessions, but not contented with yourself until you have made the best of them. To despise nothing in the world except falsehood and meanness, and to fear nothing except cowardice. To be governed by your admirations rather than by your disgusts. To covet nothing that is your neighbor's except his kindness of heart and gentleness of manners. To think seldom of your enemies, often of your friends, and every day of Christ, and to spend as much time as you can with body and with spirit in God's out of doors. These are little guideposts on the footpath of peace. That is by Henry Van Dyke. Next we have Life is Earnest. Live as though life was earnest and life will be so. That is by Owen Meredith. Next we have Voiceless. Vain is the chiming of forgotten bells that the wind sways above a ruined shrine. Vainer his voice in whom no longer dwells hunger that creates immortal bread and wine. Light songs we breathe that perish with our breath out of our lips that have not kissed the rod. They shall not live who have not tasted death. They only sing who are struck dumb by God. That is by Joyce Kilmer. Next we have Guide. A man's conscience may be mistaken, but still, after all, it is the only light that he has got, which will enlighten him to each separate case where he has a choice of conduct. A man's conscience may be mistaken, but if so, obedience to it is a mistake and not a sin, and we know that mistakes are very different from sins. If our conscience be mistaken because we have not taken due trouble to enlighten it, then for that neglect of cultivation, our conscience, we are responsible. But even then, the conscience claims our obedience, and if to obey it is a mistake, to disobey is a sin. All other authorities speak to men in general. This voice speaks to the very soul that hears it, and to none other. All other authorities speak of the general rules by which we must live. This voice speaks of what is to be done now, here, in these circumstances. Now, who can help feeling that a command given to him personally to do or not to do a given act at the moment must have more weight than a general command given to all men, given for all times, it is as if God himself has interfered for our guidance and had thereby superseded all other guidance. And though the messenger, whom thus comes directly from God, may after all be mistaken, yet surely we can do nothing but obey him and pray God to guard him against mistakes. That is by John Foster. Next we have comrades. I walked with poets in my youth because the world they drew was beautiful and glorious beyond the world I knew. The poets are my comrades still, but dearer in my youth, for now I know that they alone picture the world of truth. That is by William Roscoe Thayer. Life lessons. We've all got to go to school, I expect, and we don't all get the same lesson to learn, but the one we do get is ourn. Tain't nobody else's. And if it's real hard, why it shows the teacher thinks we're capable. That is by Rose Terry Cook. Forgetting God. No man can be without his God. If he have not the true God to bless and sustain him, he will have some false God to delude and to betray him. The psalmist knew this, and therefore he joined so closely, forgetting the name of our God and holding up our hands to some strange God. For every man has something in which he hopes on, which he learns, to which he retreats and retires, with which he fills up his thoughts in empty spaces of time, when he is alone, when he lies sleepless on his bed, when he is not pressed with other thoughts, to which he betakes himself in sorrow or trouble, as that from which he shall draw comfort and strength, his fortress, his citadel, his defense, and has not this good right to be called his God. Man was made to lean on the Creator, but if not on him, then he leans on the creature in one shape or another. The ivy cannot grow alone. It must twine around some support or other. If not the goodly oak, then the ragged thorn around any dead stick, whatever, rather than have no stay nor support at all. It is even so with the heart and affections of man. If they do not twine around God, they usually twine around some meaner thing. That is by Trench. Creating symphonies. We can read poetry and recite poetry, but the live poetry is the Symphony of Life. That is by S. Francis Foote. Next we have Self-Reliance. Let's see what this is about. Napoleon, when he was only a boy in years, spread out his future before his uncle. His uncle shook his head and said, "Dreams." Napoleon stepped quickly to the window and pointed up into the noonday sky. Do you see that star? No, was the reply. I do, he answered. And that star led him to the summit of human renown. Faith is one condition of greatness, and no man ever yet held the confidence of his fellows who did not believe in himself. The story goes that Colonel Roosevelt went to heaven. Going up to St. Peter, he asked if he could have 10,000 sopranos sing. The reply was in the affirmative. He then asked for 10,000 alto singers and was told he could have those. Next, he asked for 10,000 tenor singers, and St. Peter replied that he could have those. Roosevelt thanked him and started to turn away. St. Peter stopped him with, "What about bass singers?" "Oh, I'm going to sing bass myself." That is by Fowler. Next we have Per Aspera. Thank God a man can grow. He is not bound, when earthward gaze, to creep along the ground. Though his beginnings be but poor and low, thank God a man can grow. The fire upon his altars may burn dim, the torch he lighted may in darkness fail, and nothing to rekindle it avail, yet high beyond the dull horizon's rim, Arcturus and the Pleiades beckon him. That is by Florence Earle Coates. He who is firm in will molds the world to himself. That is by Goethe. Next we have better. We have read of the young artist, wearied and discouraged, who slept by the picture which he had done his best to complete. The master quietly entered the room, and bending over the sleeping pupil, placed on the canvas with his own skillful hand the beauty which the worn artist had striven in vain to portray. And when we, tired and spent, lay down earth's toil, our own great master will make perfect our picture for the Father's many-mansioned house. For our service, he will remove every stain, every blemish, and every failure. To our service, he will give the brightest luster and highest honor. Shall we not bring ourselves to the one who can make us better? That is from the Public Speaker's Library. Progress in the sense of acquisition is something, but progress in the sense of being is a great deal more. To grow higher, deeper, wider as the years go on, to conquer difficulties and acquire more and more power, to feel all one's faculties unfolding and truth descending into the soul. This makes life worth living. That's by J.F. Clark. Temptation. No man was ever lost in a straight road. This famous saying, which is attributed to the Emperor Akbar, is worthy of a place among the Proverbs of Solomon. It is worthy, too, of a place in the memory of every Christian who would walk worthily of his holy profession and would keep off forbidden ground. Going on pilgrimage to heaven in the days of John Bunyan was not always an easy business, nor is it in our days. Then the chief hindrance arose in the form of violent opposition and persecution. Now the danger comes from alluring temptations. That is by Collier. Next we have Invictus. The soul of perseverance cannot be beaten. Imprison it and you get Pilgrim's Progress. Blind it and you get Paradise Lost. Deafen it and you get Definite and you get a wizard in electricity. Put it into a log cabin and it will work its way to the White House. Commit it to the frozen seas of the Arctic region and it finds the North Pole. Return its poems 70 times and you get a poet for the nation's homes. Next is the prospect. Methinks we do as fretful children do, leaning their faces on the window pane. A sigh, the glass dim with their own breath stain, and shut the sky and landscape from their view. And thus, alas, since God the Maker drew a mystic separation twixt those twain, and life beyond us and our souls in pain, we miss the prospect which we are called unto. By grief we are fools to use. Be still and strong, O man, my brother, holding thy sobbing breath, and keep thy soul's large window free from wrong. That so as life's appointments issueth, and vision may be clear, and watch along the sunset consummation lights of death. That is by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Now we have New Year. 1. Face the new year with the old book. 2. Face the new year with the old promise. 3. Face the new problems with the old gospel. 4. Face the new life with the old remedies. That is from Selected. Next we have Christianity. The Christian life is an enlistment for the whole man and for life. The call of Christ is a call to detach ourselves from many things that we may attach ourselves to one thing. That is by Tyler. Next, we have verbs. No one really knows what it is to live until they can truly say these 11 great verbs of life. I am, I think, I know, I feel, I wonder, I see, I believe, I can, I ought, I will, I serve. Life is but the process of learning through daily experience and the meaning of these 11 wonderful little verbs of life and acquiring the personal power of each. I am the power of self-knowledge. I think the power to investigate. I know the power to master facts. I feel the power to appreciate, to value, and to love. I wonder the power of reverence, curiosity, worship. I see the power of insight, imagination, and vision. I believe the power of adventurous faith. I can power to act and skill to accomplish. I ought the power of conscience and moral imperative. I willpower, loyalty to duty, consecration. I serve power to the useful, devotion to a cause. That is by George Walter Fisk. Life's loyalties. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. That is by Abraham Lincoln. Next we have Recipe for a Happy New Year. Take 12 fine, full-grown months. See that these are thoroughly free from all old memories of bitterness, rancor, hate, and jealousy. Cleanse them completely from every clinging spite. Pick off all specks of pettiness and littleness. In short, see that these months are freed from all the past. Have them as fresh and clean as when they first came from the great storehouse of time. Cut these months into 30 or 31 equal parts, then this batch will keep for just 1 year. Do not attempt to make up the whole batch at one time. So many persons spoil the entire lot in this way. But prepare 1 day at a time as follows. Into each day put 12 parts of faith, 11 of patience, 10 of courage, 9 of work. Some people omit this ingredient and so spoil the flavor of the rest. 8 of hope, 7 of fidelity, 6 of liberality, 5 of kindness, 4 of rest. Leaving this out is like leaving the oil out of the salad. Don't do it. 3 of prayer, 2 of meditation, and 1 well-selected resolution. If you have no conscientious scruples, put in about a teaspoonful of good spirit, a dash of fun, a pinch of folly, a sprinkling of play, and a heaping cupful of good humor. Pour into the whole love and libitum, and mix with a vim. Cook thoroughly in a fervent heat. Garnish with a few smiles and a sprig of joy, and serve with quietness, unselfishness, and cheerfulness. And a happy new year is a certainty. That's by HMS. Next we have imagination. There are 2 worlds. The world that you can measure with line and rule, and the world that we feel with our hearts and imagination. That's by Leah Hunt. Next we have progress. Our business in life is not to get ahead of other people, but to get ahead of ourselves, to break our own record, to outstrip our yesterdays by today's, to bear our trials more beautifully than we ever dreamed we could, to whip the tempter inside and out as we never whipped him before, to give as we never have given, and to do our work with more force and a finer finish than ever. This is the true ideal, to get ahead of ourselves, to beat someone else in a game, or to be beaten. Many mean much or little. To beat our own game means a great deal. Whether we win or not, we are playing better than we ever did before. And that's the point, after all, to play a better game of life. That's from Evangelist. Next we have, I had a rendezvous with life. In days I hope will come, ere youth has sped and strength of mind, ere voices sweet grow dumb. I have a rendezvous with life when spring's first heralds hum. Sure, some would cry it better far to crown their days with sleep, then face the wind and road and the rain to heed the falling deep. Though wet, oh, though wet, nor blow, nor space I fear, yet fear I deeply too, lest death should greet and claim me ere I keep life's rendezvous. That is by County Colin. I Have a Rendezvous with Life is from Color by County Colin, copyright 1925 by Harper and Brothers. Next we have Greatness, and this is going to be the last one. It is great, and there is no other greatness to make one nook. Oh, sorry, let me read this one again. The language is a little bit difficult. Greatness. It is great, and there is no other greatness to make one nook of God's creation more fanciful, better, more worthy of God, to make some human heart a little wiser, manlier, happier, more blessed, less accused. And that's by Carlyle. And we are going to pick this up next time with chapter 25 on possessions. We have been reading from Leaves of Gold, and it is a book edited by Clyde Francis Lytle. Next, we've been reading specifically chapter 24 on perspective. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way, if you want to join the Discord server, all the information will be in the description below. And as always, you are loved, and thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.